Welcome to Live Your Balance, a podcast for busy humans who are curious about taking a step back from overwhelm so that they can create more balance in their lives. I'm your host, Jordan Burrell. I'm a life coach and occupational therapist, and I'm also the founder and creator of Elevate Wellness. It's my mission to help empower women to step away from overwhelm so that they can feel good and create and live their balance each and every day. Hello and welcome back to episode 9 of the Live Your Balance podcast. I am so happy you have taken time out of your day to join us. You are in for a treat today, let me tell you. I wanted to start off today's episode talking about something that comes up quite often in my community, and it came up with one of my clients this week as well, and that is the want or need to prioritize productive tasks over looking after ourselves. And I think this is a really, really common belief that many of us hold. And I know that this is something that I held as a belief for a long, long time until I started working on unraveling and unwrapping all the beliefs that were keeping me from feeling balanced and living a life that felt good. I think as a society, we carry so much guilt around taking time to look after ourselves and seeing that as a less important task than all the other things that we need to do, the washing, the cooking, the cleaning, keeping everybody happy, doing all of the things. Somewhere along the way, looking after ourselves became a less important action. And I'm here today to challenge that because I really, really believe that there is nothing more valuable to you and your life and your relationships and all the other things that you need to do than looking after yourself, than putting yourself first. Looking after yourself allows you to recharge your batteries. It allows you to fill up your cup. And I will happily argue with anybody and say that when you look after yourself, when you recharge your batteries, it makes all the other stuff so much easier. We have more tolerance, we have more patience, our fuse is longer. We are more able to give in a meaningful way to the relationships that are important to us, to our family, our friends, our children. When we look after ourselves, it's not only an act of service for us, but it's an act of service for everybody else and everything else in our life as well. So today I want to encourage you to start thinking about how you can make yourself looking after your needs and taking care of your body, mind, and soul more of a priority for you. How can you bump that up your priority list and start serving yourself in order to give you more to serve other people? Because especially in the current climate that we're in, it's so easy to fall into the trap of, oh, I've got to be looking after others. I've got to be doing more for other people and forgetting about ourselves. When actually, if we take a step back, serve ourselves, fill up our cup, recharge our batteries, we are going to have so much more to give to other people. And it's going to help us navigate this time and all the other times in our lives with far more ease and flow and grace than if we're fighting against feeling run down, overwhelmed, burnt out because we're trying to juggle too many things and we're not getting the opportunity to look after our needs. So that is my little nugget for you today, love. How can you prioritize yourself first more often so that you can serve other people? I'd love to continue this conversation over on Instagram. So do come and find me at _Elevate Wellness. And I'd love to chat you through this more if it's something that you're finding a challenge. I also just want to take a really quick opportunity to say that I have a brand new powerful freebie available for you all. If you head to elevatewellness.co.uk/free, that's elevatewellness.co.uk/free, you can sign up to get your free powerful guided audio practice that will guide you to creating your balanced vision. Creating your balanced vision is the first step that I take with my one-on-one clients, with the current group coaching clients that I have in the Live Your Balance Collective. And it is so, so powerful. Because how do we know how to create our balanced life if we don't have any clue of the destination that we're heading to? Knowing the destination allows us to plan the journey more effectively. So creating our balanced vision is the first step in actually knowing and recognizing what our balanced life looks like so that we can start thinking about how we bring it into reality. So like I said, it's completely free. Head to elevatewellness.co.uk/free to sign up today and get your powerful guide audio straight to your inbox. Anyway, without further ado, I think we should head into how does she do it. Welcome to How Does She Do It, the part of the show where we dive into finding out how our wonderful guest creates and lives her most balanced life. Each guest will answer the same 7 questions each and every week so you can get a really great idea about how she does it, how she creates and lives her balance. Today's guest for How Does She Do It is coming to us all the way from Australia. I am so excited to welcome Bree to the Live Your Balance podcast today so that she can share how she does it. Bree, I will let Bree introduce herself as always, but Bree is an occupational therapist like me. So for me, it has been super interesting to hear what she has to say about how she uses her knowledge and skills to help her live and create balance in her life. And I know that there is so much that you're going to take away from this interview. So without further ado, let's let Bree share how she does it. Question 1. Who are you? What do you do? And how do you spend your time?
Hi everyone, I'm Bree and I live in Australia, so that is the accent that you can hear. Work-wise, I'm an occupational therapist like Jordan, and I work in an all-male correctional centre or prison, depending on what term you prefer to use. There I work as a clinician, and I perform quite large biopsychosocial assessments on the men, and I also run a broad range of programs, so violence programs, drug and alcohol programs, problem-solving programs, that sort of thing. At work at the moment, I'm also acting in a communications role, and I also do supervision for the peer educators and listeners. So in the correctional system, or at least where I work, all the men have to be involved in some form of employment. So some of them are employed as peer educators and peer listeners, and I assist in their training and also provide them supervision. So work keeps me quite busy. That's my 9 to 5 or my 7:30 to 3:30. Outside of that, I do also have a little side business. You can find me on Instagram at Bree the OT. I do workshops. I'm a meditation teacher and also co-host a mental health podcast called Strong Minds Club. In March, I married my partner of over 10 years, so I'm officially a wife, which is pretty exciting. I'm also a daughter, sister, friend, dog mum. I typically occupy my time maintaining my relationships with those around me, whether it's friends, family, with my husband. I love people and I know that that's what lights me up. So, I guess that's how I occupy my time.
Question 2. What do you feel like you're good at when it comes to managing your time, including making time to look after yourself?
One thing I think I'm really good at is organisation skills. So I think I am really good at prioritising what is important and what needs to be done straight away. I love to-do lists. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I think I'm the queen of them. I usually use the method of now, next, later. I think it's probably pretty self-explanatory, but essentially I write a to-do list and I mark whether it's something I need to do now, something I need to do next, or something I need to do later. So now are things that I have to get done next to things that are still important, but, if I don't get to them today, that's okay. And later are things that just aren't a priority at the moment, but that I would really like to get to. I also use my calendar to make sure that I don't miss anything. But mostly, I guess, I use lists rather than scheduled appointments. I think it was Rachel that spoke about it in one of your previous episodes, but sometimes I am feeling a bit more motivated than other times, and sometimes things that I would love to get to just can't be a priority for me right now. So I definitely prefer to keep a list, be able to tick those off rather than having those scheduled appointments and forcing myself to do something that at the moment I really don't have the motivation for.
Question 3. What's your biggest challenge when it comes to balance?
I think my biggest challenge when it comes to balance is probably the nature of my Bree the OT work. So normally what happens is someone gets in contact with me, someone who wants to work together in some way, and I guess I don't really have much control over when that happens. So I'm always grateful for any opportunity that comes my way, but I tend to find that it's just the way that it is, but they all sort of come at once. So outside of my full-time role and then trying to fit all of those things in, sometimes I guess that makes it a bit hard to balance things. So particularly I guess when I'm trying to balance it with my other roles as a wife, a friend, a daughter, that sort of thing. So that's probably my biggest challenge.
Question 4. What do you do to help you juggle everything that you need to juggle?
I think I already started to answer this, but my to-do list really helped me juggle everything that I need to juggle. I like to be organised because it helps me to feel more in control of things. I find that my to-do lists really, really help, but also just having a bit of compassion for yourself as well, in that there are going to be times where work's full on and that's taking a bit of a priority for me, and maybe I'm not being as engaged in relationships as I would really like. But I think it does all come around in cycles. There'll be times where I put work on the back burner because there's something going on in one of my relationships that I really need to focus on, whether that's with a friend or whatever it might be. So it is about also acknowledging that life is life, and we can't control everything, and there are going to be times that things get in the way of your goals, and it's about making that judgment on what's important for you in that moment. So I guess I just try to have a bit of self-compassion and know that at any given point in time, I know that I'm doing my best, just like I'm sure everyone listening to this is doing their best at any given time. Even if sometimes it feels like maybe we're not juggling things as well as what we would like, I genuinely believe we're all trying our best to do it. So acknowledging that, I think, goes a long way.
Question 5. What's your go-to for when you feel overwhelmed?
My go-to. Okay, I think this depends. I think I've probably got about 2 things. The first one, I think, ties back into values, knowing what is important and what is your priority at any given time. So I've got an example from February or maybe even early March this year, so not that long ago. But I was working on the podcast, working on Bree the OT stuff, working full time, and I was in the final stages of wedding planning. So things were getting quite busy. I was running out of time to do things because I felt like I was being pulled in every single direction. So I had to make a judgment on what it was that was actually important to me. I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed and like I didn't have the balance that I would typically try to have. So I ended up taking a bit of a step back from social media for a bit, particularly around my Bree the OT page, because I remember making the decision or having the thought that I'm getting overwhelmed in the lead up to my wedding, and it actually has nothing to do with my wedding itself. People normally find wedding planning really stressful, and up until that point I had not. I was so chill about it, was just really excited about it, and then I found I was becoming stressed, but it actually had nothing to do with the wedding. It was because I was just trying to juggle everything else around it, if that makes sense. So yeah, I guess in that instance, it was about taking a step back and making the judgment call on what was my priority at that time. And at that time, it was getting to my wedding and making sure that it continued to be such an awesome and fun process. For smaller things, I guess, more of a day-to-day, my go-to would be things like a good debrief. Yeah, I'm going to say a good debrief. I wasn't actually sure when I started answering this question. How bad's that? Yeah, my go-to when I'm overwhelmed is a debrief. I'm such a chatter, in case you can't tell that by now. Apologies. I love to talk. I love to talk through things. If I'm feeling comfortable or uncomfortable emotions, because obviously none are negative, but more uncomfortable emotions, it's not uncommon for me to start a conversation like that. So it wouldn't be unlikely for me to approach a friend and be like, I'm feeling so overwhelmed because, and then break out into a debrief. So that's probably my go-to.
Question 6. What's one habit you do to look after yourself every day that's non-negotiable?
A non-negotiable for me is sleep. For anyone listening who knows me, this will not be a surprise. I've definitely been called a nunna on a regular basis because of my sleeping patterns, but I know I need a good night's sleep to function at my best. So I am definitely one of those people, particularly on a weeknight. I go to bed quite early. I just need it. I just really need sleep in order to function. Like when people tell me that they only get like 5 hours, I die. I can't. Yeah, I could not do that. Apologies to all the mums that are listening that are probably rolling their eyes like 5 hours, I wish. Yeah, sorry about that. Other than that, I do some form of mindset work every single day. So whether that's affirmations, gratitude, meditation, something like that every day. It can be structured, so it could be writing in my gratitude diary, driving in my car on the way to work, saying affirmations out loud, or naming 3 things that I'm grateful for that day in the car. But they're my non-negotiables.
Question 7. What does creating a balanced life mean to you?
Creating a balanced life to me means living a life aligned with my values, where I feel completely fulfilled in all areas that are important to me. I acknowledge that at times throughout my life that is going to look different. There's going to be times where something that was once important to me isn't going to be as important to me, and things at the moment that aren't important to me may become important to me in the future. So creating a balanced life to me is living a fulfilled life, whatever that looks like at the time. Thank you so much, Jordan, for having me on today. I really appreciate it and I have a lot of gratitude for it. I think what you were doing is completely amazing and completely incredible, and I think that there's going to be so many people that will benefit from it. So thank you so much.
As always, a big thank you goes to Bree for joining us to share how she does it. I personally loved hearing about how Bree, as a fellow occupational therapist who is also juggling stuff on the side, creates her balance. One thing that Bree talked about as a challenge for her in creating her balance was dealing with uncertainty. The uncertainty of not knowing when she's going to be faced with another task on her to-do list or another demand or responsibility for the people that she's serving in her community. I feel that uncertainty is a really powerful topic to be discussing, especially at the moment as we're all living in a time of huge uncertainty. Even the things that we maybe felt were a dead cert, that have provided us with safety and security for many years, may no longer feel certain to us, and that is unsettling to say the least. The thing is though, uncertainty is very much an unavoidable part of life. Actually, there's really very little in life that's truly certain, although it's so very easy to forget that as we're just going about our stuff. But it makes sense that it's unsettling, because if we think back to how we evolved and to times when we lived in caves and actually had to fight to survive, uncertainty had potentially dire consequences in that situation. Research shows that when we're faced with increasing uncertainty, our brain, rather than rely on logic and reason, jumps straight into emotion mind. It meets uncertainty with fear and anxiety rather than rational problem solving. This might help explain why, at the start of the whole COVID crisis, many people went a little bit overboard on buying all the toilet roll and all the pasta that the supermarkets had to offer. Their brains were reacting to the major uncertainty in front of them from a place of emotion over logic. Now, I'm someone who's really curious about emotions and how they drive our thoughts and behaviours. I'd say I'm personally quite an emotionally feeling person, in that often my emotions can feel quite intense and overwhelming, but over the years I've also become quite skilled at keeping my emotions under wraps because it felt safer that way, and actually learning more about my own emotions has been hugely transformational for me personally. Emotions drive action. They're effectively energy in motion. Each emotion has a function in keeping us safe and alive and keeping us as part of our community, because back in the day when we lived in caves, it really was a case of life and death if we got kicked out of the gang or if we were faced with a saber-toothed tiger. In many cases now though, our emotions aren't alerting us to life or death situations on a daily basis, but the intensity of them can still make us feel that way. Now, I'm not going to dive much further into the whys and what fors of emotions right now, because that's a discussion for another episode. But I think it's important to note the impact of different emotions when we're thinking about uncertainty, knowing that in uncertain times or situations, our brain is pushed into this emotional state of mind. We like to feel in control. I don't know about you, but any situation where I feel like I'm out of control can be hugely uncomfortable, and again, it fires up all these fears of uncertainty. The issue of control is something that comes up often with my coaching clients and in my community, and the thing is, clinging on to control or the want to be in control can often actually cause us so much unnecessary struggle or even suffering. I think a huge driver behind this uncomfortableness with uncertainty is due to feeling like we're out of control, or maybe even the realization that actually there's not a whole lot in life that we actually have control over. In reality, we only really have control over ourselves. our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. And maybe, just maybe, we have a small amount of control over our immediate environment to a degree. But even then, we can't take much control over that. So really, control and certainty starts and stops with ourselves, and that can feel really uncomfortable. The reality is we can't control other people. We can't control what they do, they say, or they think. We might try really, really hard to, but really, by doing that, it's because we're not taking ownership of our own stuff. We want them to do something different so that we can feel differently or think differently or behave differently maybe. When really, instead of trying to control others, we need to come back to ourselves and managing our own stuff. The current global situation has shown us the true reality of how much of life is actually outside of our control, and I know that is so unsettling. We can't control that there's this virus kicking about. We can't control that a consequence of that might have been that the job we really found security in is no longer actually that secure. And it makes sense that fear is arising, and it's totally understandable. But I also want you to ask yourself, is this fear serving me, or is it keeping me stuck? What is actually within my control here? Often we can place blame on things that are outside of our control, and sometimes these situations can be really unfortunate and actually nothing to do with us and everything to do with the other person. But that doesn't mean we're devoid of responsibility. Actually, in the face of uncertainty, I'd argue it's even more important to take radical yet compassionate responsibility for ourselves and how we show up in the face of it. And that's not easy. I know it's not easy because I've been there. And I want you to know right now that I'm with you. I see you and I feel you, and I know that navigating uncertainty is hard stuff. But we can do hard things and we can tackle uncertainty. We can't predict the future. We can't read minds. That's a fact. We can only do the best we can with what we've got. So today I wanted to share 7 tips for helping you to navigate uncertain times. I would actually really encourage you to maybe get a notepad and a pen out if it's safe and you're able to do so that you can take some notes on these, because I think this is going to be super powerful for you. So tip number 1 is to start taking mindful notice of your experiences. Get friendly with your thoughts and emotions and how they show up in your body. This awareness of our experiences is so powerful in helping us know when our emotions are running the show and how they influence our thoughts and our experiences in our body. Sometimes we might not know the emotion straight away, but we might have a feeling inside of us like a pit in our stomach, or our heartbeat's racing, or our hands are starting to sweat. And that is our body giving us really valuable clues as to what we're experiencing in that moment. Mindful observing of our experiences requires us to observe from a distance, to not get involved in the thoughts and the emotions, but more so be an observer. I like to describe this as your thoughts and emotions are an episode of Coronation Street, and you're the person sat on the other side of the telly observing them. You're not getting involved in the drama. You're not getting involved in everything that's going on. You're sat there from a position of an observer, spectating the experience rather than being in it. Tip number 2 is to notice your worry thoughts. Notice when your mind is jumping to the what ifs and trying to predict the future. This is your emotion mind having a little freak out about being out of control, and that's okay. But notice it, and notice when your worry thoughts are guiding you to be prepared in a healthy and reasonable way versus keeping you stuck and causing you all sorts of pain for things that you don't have any power or control over. Worry thoughts spiral so easily, and before you know it, you have gone down a complete vortex of worry and anxiety and fear. So noticing your worry thoughts and then taking the mindful observer stance can help you take a step back and not get involved in the drama. Tip number 3 is to ask yourself, what's the threat? What's the worst case scenario in this situation? Often when we ask ourselves this question, it can help us start thinking more rationally and logically about what's really at stake here. What our emotions tell us about the threat and the actual threat can be 2 very different things. But if you know the threat, then you can start to also consider how you can get through it. And if you know you have a plan of how to deal with the worst case scenario situation, then that can offer you some peace and comfort in navigating the uncertainty. Tip number 4 is to check in with the facts. So often we get caught up in what we don't know about the situation and then start to believe that it's all uncertain and our emotions blow it all out of proportion. When in reality, there may be a lot that we do know about the situation, and there may be many factors that we do actually have control over in terms of how we deal with it and how we show up. So take a moment to take the uncertainty to court and check in with the evidence, check in with the cold hard facts, rather than what your emotions are telling you are the facts. Although I think it's also important to note that there is fact and validity in what you're experiencing. So this isn't about downplaying your emotions and getting rid of them, but just acknowledging what the truths are in the situation. Tip number 5 is to listen to your gut. Whether you call it your gut, your intuition, your higher self, your inner knowing, your wise mind, listen to it. Your gut response is usually the feeling that comes through in the couple of seconds before the fear kicks in. But fear speaks louder, so we tend to listen to that over what our inner guidance is telling us. Your gut has your best interests at heart, love, and what it's guiding you towards might feel uncomfortable and uncertain, but your gut wouldn't be taking you there if there wasn't valuable learning and growth in it for you. Again, this links in with mindfully noticing your experiences, because if we're not mindfully aware of what's going on in our body, it can be really hard to notice that gut feeling, that inner feeling. So this is your call to start listening to it and observing it. Tip number 6 is to focus on what you can control. Yes, there's lots of uncertainty in situations, but that doesn't mean that you're devoid of opportunity to take control and ownership of yourself. Let's take the example of feeling uncertain about the outcome of a job interview. You're not the one making the decision, and that's not within your control. But what you can control is the time you spend researching the job or the company that's holding the interview, the time you spend preparing, how you show up on your day, how your CV is presented, the energy that you bring to the interview. They are all things that are within your control. So whilst the actual decision isn't your decision to make, you can influence the decision by taking ownership and control of your own stuff, of how you show up. So this is about focusing on what you can do, coming back to you and what you have the power to control in any situation. Tip number 7 is to make a decision. The fear of uncertainty can paralyze us into not taking action. Remember, by nature, uncertainty throws us into our emotion mind, and if it stirs up fear, then we might well be experiencing our fight, flight, or freeze response at play. This can lead to us not taking any responsibility at all and avoiding decision making by not taking action. We freeze, we stand still. But this often doesn't solve the problem of uncertainty, and many times it can actually prolong our struggle. In saying, I'm not going to do it because I can't make a decision, you're effectively making a decision without owning it. You're taking what you believe to be the easy option of not taking action, but in the process, you're maintaining your position in the struggle. Uncertainty wins, and you reinforce that you can't make decisions when actually you can. Make a decision either way and own it. Stand in the power of your decision and your commitment to it. So as a recap, those 7 steps were: number 1, start taking mindful notice of your experiences. Number 2, notice your worry thoughts. Number 3, ask yourself, what's the threat? Number 4, check in with the facts. Number 5, listen to your gut. Number 6, focus on what you can control. And number 7, make a decision. Now, as always, this isn't an exhaustive list. There might well be other ways that you've found of managing and navigating uncertainty in your life. And if you do have other strategies, I would love to hear them. So please head on over to my Instagram @_elevate_wellness and let's continue the conversation there. I'd also just like to remind you about the free download that you can get on my website to help you take the first step in creating and living your most balanced life. So head to elevatewellness.co.uk/free to get your powerful free guided audio practice to help you create your balanced vision, plus a bonus worksheet. Thank you again goes to Bree for joining us today and inspiring this conversation. Head to the show notes below for more information on where you can find Bree in the online space and how to get involved with her work. Thank you for taking the time for listening to this episode of Live Your Balance today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I really can't wait to see you here with us next week. If you've enjoyed this episode of Live Your Balance, then please consider leaving a rating or review in whichever app you use to listen to your podcast. It's greatly appreciated and helps more people find the podcast so that more people can join us in living their balance too. That's all for today. So until next time, don't forget to keep living your balance.